Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Claim Game Studio. I'm Jeremy Zug. This is, who are you? You're Kathryn Zug. And we're coming to you today with another episode another round, of the Claim Game. As a reminder, this season of the Claim Game, we're going through the revenue cycle management best practices one board territory at a time. Last time around the table, though, we finished the credentialing territory by discussing the key credentialing metrics to track the success of your credentialing processes. So remember, these are your key territories, and mastering each one is crucial for victory to win the claim game. So today we'll be drawing magnifying glasses, if you will, to provide specific spaces within these domains, revealing the winning strategies to navigate the board with ease and confidence, ultimately claiming victory for your practice's bottom line. So quick reminder, if you missed the initial setup and want to understand the full scope of the RCM board and how each of the 6 domains of billing work together, be sure to check out episode 1 for the complete overview. We really do give you a nice top-down look at what billing is all about. And I think that would be the best place to start. So today we're going to focus our attention on our current territory, which is our new territory.
Second territory.
Second one, we're here, which is patient registration. We're not even we've done credentialing, now patient registration, and today we're zooming in on the entire territory. So
this is a kind of a zoom.
Yeah,
zooming out of credentialing and giving an overview of patient registration.
That's right. So like Kathryn said, today's going to be an overview of that territory as a whole. So get ready, get out a piece of paper and a pen, unless you're driving or something, and let's get ready to analyze patient registration's unique challenges and discover optimal moves to conquer it. So let's strategize. So
credentialing is all about getting your player piece on the board, but you still can't really play the game because there's no one else on the board.
That's right. I mean, you've got payers, and you probably started to market your practice, or you've already marketed your practice, and maybe this is an area of frustration within your practice that, the phone is ringing, we're managing all of these clients on spreadsheets,
or you have a wait list,
a dang wait list, and you've got providers that want to get busy. I mean, they want to do the thing that they're called to do. And so this can feel like the pipeline is clogged, right?
Yeah, you don't want to wait in credentialing and then wait again in patient registration.
No, you want to get patients.
You're ready.
Yeah, you want to get patients into the practice, seeing patients as quickly as you can. So we spent a lot of time, Kathryn, talking about credentialing, and a lot of time spent on credentialing. Credentialing is big, hairy, but with the right orientation, you can definitely navigate that particular territory well. And that's how you get a player piece on the board. But now we have to get our game piece, if you will, right? Your chess piece. So how do we get players on the board? What's the next territory we have to conquer? How do we go about thinking through patient registration?
Yeah, I think when we first started talking about the RCM cycle, that we talked about how there's this credentialing segment that feeds into this patient registration segment that finally feeds into the actual billing cycle, that turn. And so we are still in one of those initiating segments of that specific diagram. And we need to conquer that in order to enter that moving cycle. Yes. And so this is really what we said in, I think, round 1, is that this is the process that gets other people onto the board to quote unquote play against you. Obviously, your patients are not your adversaries.
Yeah.
Let's assume it's a cooperative game.
Yeah.
But
like Ravine, that game is amazing. It's
Ravine.
sort of like Ravine in that sense. They're not a sponsor of the podcast.
That's not a popular game. So you probably don't know what it is, but if you've never played it, it's pretty fun.
It's very good.
So yeah, you need to have other people on the board. So patient registration is about so much more than just collecting data, which is an important part of patient registration, which if you haven't learned who I am yet, you will learn that organization and process and data collection is like a huge value of mine. And it has become clear over the years how important those things are for running a successful practice and business. But more than that, patient registration is about your first impression, which will in turn affect long-term patient retention and practice reputation. So before we even get to intake paperwork, we're talking about, what does your website look like? How inviting is it? How clear is the information that you've listed about who you are and who you serve? And do you pick up the phone when someone contacts you? Do you answer them?
That's huge.
So this is a much bigger process than just...
It's not stuffy. I mean, it's a very active, dynamic process. This process also directly impacts patient care, right? For those of you that deal with prior authorizations, for example, unless you have a very clear idea of how this workflow operates, you could get hung up in the prior authorization world. That's another territory to deal with altogether.
It's a sub-territory.
It's a sub-territory, I suppose. How fast and how clean that part is, it really gets determined here. So I'm sort of getting ahead of myself by diving into some of those details, but Kathryn, can you give us a look at an overview of what's involved in patient registration as an entire territory on the game board?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, credentialing is the initiating step from a background perspective, but this is the initiating step of forward-facing reputation setting things. So it's really important for getting your practice moving. When it's done poorly, it can lead to billing nightmares and patients that don't come back, or patients that don't come back.
Or leave you a bad review, or don't get care that they need.
Yeah, I was going to say, keeps other patients from coming.
Yeah.
But when it's done really well, it can really impact your momentum as a practice. And it can lead to really smooth billing and strong patient relationships.
That's right.
Because I think about patient registration, and so you've got my first impression from a marketing perspective. I think that's part of patient registration.
For sure.
Because you are immediately setting your reputation in the eyes of your patient. But then you've got, sitting in the waiting room. What's my experience sitting in your waiting room?
Usually bad. I mean,
well, maybe, but
the carpet smells like mice or whatever. You got like that
don't let that happen.
Stale coffee smell. Some lady's coughing on you. I mean, it can be really bad, or it can be like really smooth. I guess.
We're reading a book as a staff, and this morning we just read about guarantees.
Yeah.
Business guarantees, what was it? Federal Express was...
Yeah, overnight delivery.
Get it overnight, guaranteed.
That's right.
But one of the guarantees that they mentioned was about no wait time.
Yeah, in emergency rooms. Which, if any of you know about those emergency rooms, I'm not saying we're in the ER a lot, but please send those our way. I'd love to see an ER that moves faster.
Where are those guarantees?
Where in the world is that?
But I think the point is that the pain point that their customers are feeling is that they have to sit in a waiting room forever and wait for care.
Well, and I'll give you one from our life, right? Like, we have kiddos, and we have one particularly active one. And so we had to make an unfortunate visit to an ER here in Michigan. And it was such a good experience. And it was so clean and fast. So, I mean, I guess we do have one in our area that we've recommended that particular organization to other people. We just think, look, if you go to your local one where we live, you're going to wait.
We've been to that one too.
And waited 10 hours versus that one, and you get seen in half an hour, they wrap you up, and then you're out the door in under an hour and a half. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So it does it like that's impacted our recommendation even.
So yes, it will impact your first impression. And there's
Sure.
a reason that those kinds of guarantees exist.
Right.
But we're going to break down this territory into 5 key subcategories to make it a little bit less daunting.
Yeah, that's good.
From an RCM perspective, what is included in patient registration? Intake, which does include a call script, what information you need to collect, what types of forms you'll be using in intake, getting them set up in a portal or an EHR. And then stage 2, subcategory 2, provider assignment and scheduling, making sure that they're presenting problems, their preferences are taken into consideration when assigning a provider. And then that provider will have scheduling needs.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And so will the patient. So then you have a matching issue. Checkout. Patient registration is not complete until the first checkout is done.
Yes.
HIPAA compliance. How do I handle patient information? And then we will also go over those key performance indicators for how to measure the success in patient registration.
If you haven't noticed, we love KPIs. We love measurement.
We will have KPIs for every territory.
There are KPIs for every territory. You need to know them. You need to love them. You need to manage them. Or you need to have somebody else who's tracking them in case you're not the data person, which some of you aren't. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So
yeah, it's less so about you doing the keystrokes of that yourself and more so about you understanding what the implications of that data mean for your practice.
Yeah, it's like most days now I use Google like Maps to go anywhere. If I got in the car without that, I would have no idea where I'm going. That's what KPI data is. All right, so let's talk about intake. What's involved in that initial intake process? And how does it set the stage for a successful patient relationship and a clean revenue cycle? And maybe expound, Kathryn, a little bit on how poor intake processes lead to a high volume of claim rejections or denials. Those are different things later on.
So this is where you do take all of the patient information and properly process it for use within your practice. And so a poor intake can lead to a high volume of claim rejections and denials if, for example, I don't keep good records or I don't have a process for keeping records, and that would include keeping IDs and insurance cards on file. So if I don't have any way to check that my records are correct because I don't keep that information, then you are probably going to have a problem.
Oh, you're definitely going to have a problem. And I think for those of you that are moving really fast, and we've worked with practice owners that are built kind of like us, where they move really quick. Sometimes they don't think through all the details. You're going to want those details when it comes time to explain benefits to a client.
Yes.
You want those details when it comes time to charge a patient. You're going to want those details for a whole bunch of reasons. And so while Kathryn's talking about record management, it's really important that you don't view this as a stuffy process, but view it as a lifesaver down the road.
Plus, it's like you're going to do this so often that this should not be arduous over time. It's just like this is the checklist of things that we do every time there's a patient. So what's involved in intake? You probably need a process, and that would include having some sort of administrative intake packet, which I would consider more of what is our internal packet of information that we need to know so that we can properly collect information from patients. So a lot of practices might have a script that they use. Every time a new patient calls and they want to schedule an appointment, I follow a script or I follow bullet points or I follow something that allows me to make sure that I don't skip anything. And I will say there are probably wonderful admins out there that have done this for so long that they're like, I do not need a script, but I promise you that everybody makes mistakes. So it is best.
People retire.
Oh,
people turn over.
And then you have forgotten that you have this script or these bullet points, and you've tried to recreate it. Now you have 10 versions of it, and you don't know which one's the most up to date. We just had this problem internally today where it's like, hey, I was looking for this document and I couldn't find it, but when I searched for it, I found 10 versions of it.
That's right.
I don't know which one's the most up to date. So having some kind of procedure for keeping that intake packet, updating that intake packet, having revisions on it so that you do know when was this last released and do we have a revision table and things like that. Just because it's important when you have updates that they get incorporated into that sort of documentation. And then on the flip side, in intake, you probably need a patient-facing intake packet with all kinds of forms, which we will go into great detail on when we zoom specifically into intake. But you need quite a bit of, I would say, paper resource in the intake section.
Yeah, of course. Every doctor's office you've ever been to has some version of this, whether it's electronic or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it operates the same exact way every single time so that you get the best information. Now, whether or not people fill their information in correctly, like the number of people that don't know their birthday or get it wrong is honestly shocking to me. But not to judge anyone, but if you don't know your birthday, you got to get your birthday right. But at least your processes are static. So Kathryn, I've heard you mention before that some practices do a poor job of collecting that information at the front end. We've heard this from our team ad nauseum, or they don't ask for updated information at the start of every appointment. That's an important one, that little sign that says, let us know if anything's changed with your insurance. If that's a boring sign, that's an important sign. Is collecting card images and filling out intake paperwork not standard? Have you ever not done that?
No, I think it's standard. In fact, I've even gone to get lab work done. Dude, technology is awesome.
It is pretty great.
I've gone recently to get lab work done, and it's like there's no check-in desk at all, which for lab work is totally fine. I don't care about your bedside manner when I'm getting my blood drawn really quick.
In fact, yeah, the less the better.
Kind of, yeah. But they had a stand with, I would say, like a tablet-sized screen, and all you do is they have this little card reader. And it says, crazy. Place your front of your ID, back your ID, front of your insurance card, back your insurance card. And it makes me do it every time when I get blood drawn. I mean, yeah. No, I'm pregnant, so I get blood drawn sometimes.
1984. Yeah, I mean, it's all like really forward-facing, it seems like, these days, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure there's technology that exists like that. But then you also have EHRs that have patient portals that say, just take a picture of it and upload it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And there's reminders sent out multiple days before.
Yep.
So there should be no excuse for that. And so it's really a matter of deciding what is the most effective for you in your office setting. Because the technology exists.
And you also have to keep in mind that people are multivariate, right? They're very different. So some people are going to get annoyed by all of your reminders and some people are going to get annoyed by whatever, but you need to include all of that to make sure you get the right documentation and you really cover the gamut of the personality styles of people that are coming to your office. So once we have all that information, what about getting a patient assigned to a provider and on the schedule? Where can things go wrong from here, from a billing perspective, from a revenue cycle management perspective? We've talked about something called ghost networks. How does that relate to this part of the process? That's a lot of questions for you, Kathryn. I hope you can nail all those down, but it's really important that we know.
So first you're just getting all of their information in. Now it's a matter of properly matching them to a provider within your office, which has multiple factors. I mean,
for some of you, it doesn't, right?
Sometimes.
Some of you are working 8 to 8 or whatever, and you're just rocking and rolling. Some of you have part-time folks. Some of you have...
Yeah, but I think it's worth talking about. It's worth throwing into your hoppers to consider if you don't have a very formalized provider assignment process, to consider how that is impacting your reputation.
In what way?
Well...
Talk more about that.
Let's say that your normal process is just to pick someone who's available.
Anyone, just a warm body?
Yeah, like we all have the same specialty. We're just a group of people with the same specialty. You can see anybody that's available. And Dr. Smith is available.
Wow, fancy name.
Yep, so fancy. What happens if Dr. Smith is a female and this patient wants a male provider, but that wasn't collected?
Oh, yeah, that's fair. So patient preference is not identified. Mm-hmm. And so then the patient walks in uncomfortable, they don't come back. right? Maybe they pay their copay, but they're not coming back to
Or
not
they were
referring
really
you.
uncomfortable the whole time.
Or they're really uncomfortable. Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are some specialties where it doesn't really matter, right? Like lab work, it doesn't matter who pulls, right? But like you look at maybe OBGYN, right? Midwifery services, people care. People care a lot about
I would
who their
say,
provider is.
yeah,
And
well, of course, midwife,
right.
But I would say,
Like cardiologist.
I think there are going to be preferences like that no matter what.
Yeah, I think in a
There
lot
might
of
be
ways,
age
for sure.
preference, there might be
All
gender
kinds of
preference, there might be, I mean, like you get into like language needs. And
yeah, that's right. That's right. And not to consider like even bedside manner, right? Like who's really good with people, very results oriented, etc.
Or let's say that the patient has a presenting problem that, yes, it's in your specialty, but there's a better suited provider for that. You have less experience. So there should always be some kind of evaluation of that information. Yeah. So then it's probably easiest to first start by filtering a provider match by schedule. So first you look and see like just who is available at the same time as this patient. But then you have to filter it more with those patient preferences and maybe provider preferences and specialty limitations to get a good match. So that would be the second subcategory of patient registration is provider assignment and scheduling.
Yeah, one of the chronic issues with this process, and this is, I talked to Uriah about this actually, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when it comes to provider assignment, providers, and all of you know this, right? You'll set a schedule, and then you'll fill up, and then you'll have that one client come in. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This is a perfect client. You love working with this kind of client, but it's outside your time zone. So maybe then you fudge a little bit on your schedule, right? You say you weren't willing to work past 5, but now it's 5:30 and you're working with that client. And so it's always very difficult to try to nail down specificity and preference. Those are really hard to.
But you do kind of have to decide as a practice where you're going to fudge because
yes. Right.
Because there might not be a perfect match within your practice. And so let's say you get an 80% match and you would have to inform the patient of what doesn't match so that they can make an informed decision about moving forward. However, the other option is referring them out.
Right.
Which means you have to maintain a good referral list. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do this. You absolutely should because I think you want to have integrity in how you're assigning.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
That will serve you well, but it does have to be defined.
Yeah,
well.
It does, for sure. So here's a good assumption, right? Patient registration. So, sorry, let me back up a little bit. The process doesn't end when the session is over.
No, patient registration is still alive
and well, right?
So if that first appointment is still happening. Yeah.
Still happening.
One of the worst parts of my job, seeing practices lose revenue, not because of bad care, but because their notes didn't back it up. If you're billing insurance, you already know that your notes are your defense. So if your documentation falls short, clawbacks, appeals, and a whole lot of headaches feel inevitable. One of the best parts of my job, empowering our clients to focus on their practice, not payer back and forth. A big part of that has been discovering Blueprint, an AI assistant purpose-built for mental health care. In other words, made by therapists for the way therapists work. I've seen folks start using Blueprint to help with getting progress notes done faster, but it has turned into a game changer. Blueprint drafts compliant treatment plans, visit notes, and flags any missing clinical notes, which means fewer denials, cleaner claims, and faster revenue capture. Check the notes for the link to give Blueprint a try for free.
So what are the key elements of a solid checkout process? I've heard you mention before outside of the podcast that a patient's registration isn't complete until, well, you said it even today.
I think we've
just
even
now.
said it in a previous episode. Yeah.
That's right. The first checkout has happened, right? Patient registration is not complete until the first checkout has happened. Why is that so important? Like, why is that a sticking point for you?
Because I just think there are things that happen in checkout that help one kind of close the loop on that reputation cycle, but also that serves your practice way better.
Okay, like what?
So in my mind, in the way that we've talked to providers, checkout includes a physical checkout with someone. Hopefully you have an admin and there's a process and a physical desk with signage and they're being directed to a checkout, okay? And that would include two things if you have not already done them. Actually, one of these things you can't have already done. But that would be collecting money for the patient while they're still in the office.
Why is that? Why is that important?
Well, because the chances of you collecting it after they've left is significantly lower once they're physically out of your office.
Yeah.
And we recommend keeping a payment authorization form on file. Why is that different than having a credit card on file?
Yeah, why is that different?
Because I am signing my name to something that says you may charge my card under X, Y, and Z circumstances.
Yeah.
Which would include if I have left and not paid.
That's right. You have a line at the checkout desk. Somebody's in a hurry. They got to get their kid to soccer or softball, or they got to go to Starbucks and get their coffee, and they skip the checkout line, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need that payment authorization for because you know somebody's in a hurry to go somewhere.
It should be part of your patient intake forms, but let's say they didn't fill it out. I'm going to double check at checkout that is filled out. And I'm going to say, hey, you owe X amount of money today based on your eligibility check, which is a subcategory of patient registration, but we call it out as a separate territory. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's right.
But you owe X amount of dollars today for today's appointment. How would you like to pay that?
That's right. How would you like to pay? Can I get it? It's not a yes or no. It's like figure it out right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
And maybe setting up some kind of payment plan. So let's say, checkout technically is the end of patient registration. But let's talk about the following checkout. Let's say they didn't pay their previous bill. This is your safety net.
Ka-ching, baby. I mean, this is really where a lot of this needs to happen.
Again, if they're physically in the office, they're much more likely to pay you. So let's say that you just have a very robust process of, this is what you owe today. I see that you have a prior balance. How would you like to pay that? Here is our policy for payment plans. And one of the policies, which we'll talk more about in the checkout Zoom in, but one of the policies that we keep is if a customer owes a prior balance, they can have a payment plan on the prior balance, but they have to stay up to date on the current.
Yeah, why is that, Kathryn? Talk through that. Are you cold-hearted or is there rationale there?
I don't want anybody to be buried in debt, which is essentially what that is.
Yeah, that's right. We're not a bank. And neither are you, by the way, practice owners.
Yeah, and that's the callous way to say that.
Callous? Yeah.
Well, it's the cold-hearted sounding way to say, I'm not going to help you, to say we're not a bank. More than that, I don't want you to be in a bigger hole.
Right. Yeah.
As a patient.
Because then it's just they keep getting buried under balance and balance and balance and balance. And then they can't.
And again, we have a reputation issue to think about. Right. I actually think this protects your reputation quite a bit.
Yeah. And it sustains your bottom line. Not that this is always about money, but it's, money is just fuel in the tank of your practice, I suppose. And it helps you sustain the work and the mission of what you're trying to do. So
yeah, so there's the payment side of things. And then there is scheduling your next appointment. So even if you're a dental office,
6 months, whatever
that this is preventative care or whatever it might be, schedule it before they leave the office because it's going to be way easier than scheduling it on the phone.
It's impossible. It's impossible. People are busy. They're not going to pick up the phone for you.
Yeah.
Because they're going to look at some number and they're just going to send you to voicemail or block your number.
Now, this is not our way of suggesting that you should schedule unnecessary appointments.
Yeah, that's right.
For the sake of money. But if you know that another appointment is going to be necessary, even if it's an annual visit, get it on the calendar.
Get it on the calendar, yeah.
It's easier for you to project. It's easier for them. Yeah. They're less likely to schedule it outside of that window. So.
Oh, of course, for sure.
Those are the two main things that need to happen in checkout.
Yeah, 100%. And I've heard a lot of practices are encouraging a new KPI tracker. We went to a lot of conferences this year, which was a total joy and blessing. But yeah, they're advocating this new KPI tracker where you look at patient retention by provider. What are your thoughts on that, Kathryn? And how does it relate to patient registration?
I've heard that it's an excellent metric.
It makes sense that it would be though, right?
It gives a more complete picture of how your practice's reputation is specifically tied to your providers. So the general idea, I think, is like how long a patient stays with a provider and how many visits on average a provider has per patient.
Yeah, that's fair.
And what they have found is that there is a correlation between good provider care and those numbers. I mean,
that's
but
like
it's just not
painfully
something.
obvious.
Yeah, it's just not something that a lot of people track. But I think it's a really great thing to track.
A great metric because then you know right where to fix, right? It's sort of like that's like one of those cold-hearted truths. Sales is only about results. It's like patient retention is only ever about how good a provider is, because you don't leave a provider you love. You don't.
Yeah.
You stick with them for as long as they're willing to practice.
And it can indicate that there's a problem with your patient registration process, not just your provider care.
Sure can.
Because if you have a provider assignment issue.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. That's a good point. I didn't think about that. If you're assigning to the wrong provider and you're just flipping the pancakes out of your practice as fast as you can make them.
Yeah. So if a provider has a low retention rate,
something to look at, right?
Go back to how you assigned. Look at your notes. How good was the match at the front end?
Yeah, that could be a problem. That'd be a good place to start because it's the first step on the board, right?
Yeah, you don't necessarily want to say it's the provider being a bad provider.
Yeah, no, we would.
But at the same time, if you have a supervisor or a director at your office, that's a great opportunity for further education and
improvement.
Yeah.
Improvement. You're just going to keep chipping away. Yeah, very cool. So in all of this, of course, we have a major factor to consider, and that's HIPAA compliance. So what are the major HIPAA considerations within patient registration that providers need to be aware of and mindful of?
Yeah, so this is actually where Jeremy is more knowledgeable than Kathryn. And so I do just want to kind of turn this over to you a little bit. There are certain HIPAA compliance requirements that your practice needs to have.
Yeah, so
there are 3 rules. Right?
HIPAA is a very large piece of legislation that was passed in the 90s. And there are 3 main sections of HIPAA. There's the privacy rule. And this particular rule sets the national standards for when protected health information, and of course there's an acronym. Why wouldn't there not be an acronym here, right?
Because we're in healthcare.
Because we're in healthcare. So
there's never acronyms here.
No. So when I say PHI, it means protected health information. But the privacy rule says when that information, PHI, can be used and or disclosed. Then there's the security rule, and that safeguards that covered entities and their business associates must implement to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of PHI or electronic PHI. And then finally, there's the breach notification rule, right? Mistakes happen. People get cyber attacked. We get it. Folks are after your info. This particular rule spells out that covered entities have to notify affected individuals, maybe even the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and in some cases, the media in case of a breach of unsecured PHI. So that's a very skeletal look at HIPAA. It's very detailed and thorough and updated occasionally. And so
based on those rules, there are requirements that your practice has in order to adhere to these rules.
That's right. That's right.
So we'll talk more about those and make our recommendations for what you can do to be HIPAA compliant as a practice during patient registration. How does this relate to patient registration? Once we get to HIPAA compliance as a section.
For sure. And this is one of those, just as a side note for all of you, I know most folks went through life or school trying to do the absolute bare minimum because a lot of what you have for you from like K to 12 and maybe even in college is like busy work and just checking the boxes. HIPAA and HIPAA compliance is one of those things that you actually want to do the most that you can to hedge against any sort of non-compliance, because the fines and fees for non-compliance can be really steep. The government and the insurance companies do not take lightly to breaches of HIPAA. So
Can you clarify what you mean when you say hedge?
Yeah, what I mean when I say hedge is like if you're trying to do the bare minimum on the art assignment, so you're just gonna like finger paint turkey just to get like a C minus on the grade, that's fine. But this is the kind of thing where you'd want to like draw a photorealistic painting of the Mona Lisa in as much detail as you can, right?
I'm going to back up just a little bit and explain what the concept of hedging is.
Okay. Maybe Kathryn can do a much better job than my Mona Lisa analogy.
Well, my context for understanding hedge is this old
like Jewish term.
Law term, which basically in, I guess, Bible times, there was this rule, I guess this concept of hedging. So if there was a law and the law was, don't touch this.
Yeah.
Let's just say the law is, you must not touch this item. I wouldn't just leave that item on the table. I would measure 10 feet away from that item and I would build a fence around it.
Yeah.
And I would stay outside of the fence.
To ensure that you don't.
To ensure that I never touch
the thing.
It.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the concept that Jeremy is trying to say when he says hedge around it. That you would be so thoroughly prepared to not have a PHI breach.
Yes.
That you would actually build in systems that keep you
10 feet away.
10 feet away from it.
Yeah. Because it's just not something you want to deal with, right? And I hate this phrase with everything I've got, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's crazy. That's a crazy saying. I'll take all the pound of cure I've got for whatever issue you have. But in concept, it makes sense that you just want to prevent it so that you don't have to have the problem of needing a cure, I suppose. But we'll talk about that more later. All right, moving on. We've talked enough about HIPAA. It's boring, Kathryn. Let's talk about KPIs. Those are far less boring.
And still boring to some.
Maybe to some.
Less than HIPAA.
So once these processes are in place, right, how can a practice owner actually measure the success of their patient registration process? And what are some key metrics or KPIs that we should be looking at? Is patient retention, is that it? It's the only one we should look at?
No.
Okay.
I think there are quite a few things that you can look at to see if your patient registration processes are running smoothly or not. I am not going to list them because I don't want to cheat us out of the KPI episode. Instead, I do want to just talk about generally what are some of those things.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
I have a high volume of claim rejections. I have really bad customer satisfaction or patient satisfaction.
Yeah. Which doesn't feel good, by the way. I mean, you'll know if those are things that you have, especially the rejections and denials, right? Like if you do all the rigmarole, that's the phrase, right? Rigmarole.
For what?
Of collecting patient information. You get them assigned to a provider. The provider went to school. They've got all the whatever. They do the service that you're prepared to do. You submit a claim and then bam, that baby gets rejected and you don't get paid for it. You'll know because you'll be doing your work for free. So you'll know if you have an issue, but patient registration is a great spot to start.
I mean, rejections are almost always directly tied to bad information.
Yeah.
But some things that you can think about, like provider utilization.
That's a good one.
So one of the things that I'd be looking at is like, if my provider says that they want to work X amount of hours, am I matching them up to that? Are they increasingly getting to a full caseload so that they're utilized fully?
Yeah, that's good. Right? Isn't that a marketing problem?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It could be, but I would say marketing is part of patient registration.
Yeah, oh, that's fair. No, you did say that. Yeah, that's right.
It's not part of RCM patient registration, but it is the front end, that reputation thing that's bringing patients in. And I do think, again, this all feeds into your pipeline of patients. If you do a really good job at the RCM portion, your reputation is going to be affected.
Should be very good.
It should bring in more patients. If a patient's like, man, I was blown away by how smooth that process was. Which at the right practice, they will say.
They totally will say
because
that.
Everybody has had a bad experience at a practice. They had to wait forever and they had really, really, really outdated paperwork that's kind of blurry to read. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly.
They print out the forms and they're like this big of print. And it's just like, again, this is about user experience, which is huge in our culture. But it is part of running a business.
Yeah, well, I mean,
practice as a business.
Don't make your clients burn more calories than they need to. And why would that? You should do the work of that, right? I mean, that's why you own a a practice.
Yeah. Another thing that might
good.
be metric that you could track in patient registration is, are your patients missing and canceling appointments?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good one. The
It
practices
could
I've worked at,
be,
that's a big metric.
yeah, that could
for
be
sure.
tied to your lack of communication in your intake process.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got reminded, but it was a couple hours before and I had forgotten, and so I canceled. So those are different communication things that you have to work out in your intake process.
Yeah, no doubt about that. There's also demographic considerations there too, which we're not unaware of, right? Some of you are in really hard places to do private practice, and the demographic you work with are not perhaps the most responsible crowd to work with. And so maybe you've checked all these boxes and you're like, man, this is still really tough.
Yeah.
Could be
Maybe
that.
you have really hard parking at your office.
Oh yeah. Parking's
I have to get it validated, and it's just a headache. And as a patient, I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to do this.
It's not worth. Yeah,
it's not worth it today. I'm going to cancel.
Yeah.
That might be hard to hear. That might be hard to change.
Right.
Especially if you're like, I can't just like move.
Yeah, I'm supposed to move my building.
But it's a brutal fact. And so you have to think through what are the options. And so really, again, like a KPI dashboard is really just meant to give you direction so that you can address different concerns.
100%.
So there's that. And then you probably need some kind of metric around how you're handling your HIPAA data, your PHI.
For sure.
So
great.
Yeah, those are the general gist. We'll get into a deeper dive of like, how would I measure that? What is the best way to track this information? How do I set this up, etc. in the KPI episode.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. So,
but now those are the categories of patient registration. So intake, provider assignment and scheduling, checkout, HIPAA compliance, and KPIs.
Nice.
So now, Jeremy, it's time to draw our case study card.
It is.
And today's card asks you to tell me about a time that you saw a practice either almost lose a patient or worse, suffer significant revenue loss due to poor patient registration.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories that come to mind?
I have a couple. I'll give you a systemic one that I worked at. I've worked at several practices over my pretty linear career in this field and industry. I'll give you a blunder from my early days, and then I'll give you one that I worked at. So I worked as a clinician at a practice once, and huge wait lists, poor processes. Part of the issue was that there was never a person who owned this process in the practice. Patient registration was a different person every day. And so it was like if a client
Someone
called,
got assigned to the desk today.
A different person got assigned to the desk today, and so they had to kind of fumble through it. So you had to constantly relearn it, and you had to.
Was it scripted?
No, okay. It was like fumbling through this terrible process of like trying to manage paper intakes and the wait list and provider fit and assignment, and then because they were rotating folks in and out of that system.
And that practice that you worked at, the matching process was probably very important.
It was super important because it determined who got hours and who didn't. And of course, if you're the one who needs hours answering the phone, you're of course not going to give it to somebody else, right? So that was always an issue. Here's a good one. So early, when I was 14 or 15, I needed gas money and worked at a community mental health center. People know what that is, but just an interdisciplinary clinic. And I one time, and this provider, if she's listening, knows exactly who she is, but I triple booked her whole day.
I thought it was just 1 hour.
No. It was like a triple booked her whole day from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So she had 3 clients. So it meant that she had a client every 5 minutes of the day. And we couldn't change it because the EHR we used was so antiquated. We couldn't edit it once we printed out the schedule. So it was I apologized so much to poor Heather for this. But that was one where the clients were pretty upset because they got 5 minutes with her.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, it was really chaotic. I kept my job. I apologized profusely in the bathrooms or whatever I had to do to keep my job at 15 years old or whatever. But that was a good one because I got the scheduling wrong. I got the patient assignment really wrong. And that was a bad EHR system, by the way.
Which honestly brings up another thought for me in patient registration. Part of your intake process should be, what is the recourse if I make a mistake?
That's a great idea.
What is the recourse? What can I offer to a patient if we, first of all, write humility into your process. I have made a mistake. I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I would like to make this right.
Yeah.
Here's what
I think that was part of what
Yeah.
went well, was like I went screaming into Heather's office and said, I have made a giant mistake. How do we sort this out? We figured it out. And the patients were okay, but we had some that were a little feisty about it. But it is important that you got to figure out how to like roll with the punches in some sense. And but also like make sure the person running the front desk has got a process, right? I mean, it's really important. Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. So to recap, the importance of patient registration. Not only is it your first impression, but it has massive implications for your billing down the road. So, which will impact not only your first impression, but your long-term reputation. So patient registration is really, really important for the health and growth of your practice.
Yeah, that's great.
So next time on the claim game, we would be moving into intake and drilling in, but we're not. What are we doing instead?
Yeah, next time on the claim game, and thanks for hanging in there with us today. We have a special guest. He's a game changer named Uriah Guilford. He'll be joining us to talk about patient registration and share his best tips to help you establish a great first impression. You don't want to miss it. He defines himself as the head nerd, and he's really into AI and provides some really excellent feedback. He thinks about private practice day in and day out. Really, you won't want to miss it. It's a great episode.
Yeah, he'll help you really look at your first impression.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Talk to you next time.
See you, everybody. If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have two places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Kathryn Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.